rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. We're glad to have you here. Thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor, click that like button and subscribe. Follow the channel if it's your first time here watching the show today over at rumble.com/AP for Liberty. Welcome. The Wake Up America show is a 5-day-a-week, 2 hours in the morning news show. Streams live 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. Hope you'll make us destination listening. Stay informed on current events. Find out what's happening in the world of politics and news and liberty, of course. Economic freedom and personal liberty is what I stand for as your host. Let's talk about the news. Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens feud comes to a head, and Candace Owens is out at the Daily Wire. Of course, we got that news on Friday. We were able to discuss it a little bit, but of course, more details are coming out. We're going to discuss that this morning, and I'm sure that there'll be something for everyone to dislike about my views this morning, no matter what I say. So, sort of this thing, I think. You know, that really is the beauty of not working at a mainstream network or an alternative network, but you. As long as the audience here supports the Wake Up America show, I can say what I please, and nobody has to speculate about what happens. If I fail, it's just because, well, nobody wanted to watch the show. First, support the show. Quick little house cleaning thing before we get to the news. Just want to let you know, FYI, the studio is still in a bit of disarray. We were able to use it on Friday, but we're out of the studio for another couple of days, sadly. Hopefully, we are going to be able to get back in there later this week, but as it is right now, I've got a little temporary location set up so that I can still stream to you the Wake Up America show. It does mean that we do have some issues. For example, I am not connected directly to the internet, which means that we might have some internet problems today.
No, God! No, God!
Sorry, Michael Scott. We'll do our best, and hopefully the next 2 hours will go as smoothly as possible. We've got 3 great guests starting at 7:30 a.m. Central Time. We're going to hear from John Miltimore, editor-at-large of the Foundation for Economic Education. He's going to break down his thoughts on the feud between Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens and her firing from the Daily Wire. We'll hear from him at 7:30 a.m. Central Time, so make sure you come back here in about 25 minutes if you got some errands to run or some things you need to do. At 8 a.m. Central Time, we're going to hear from Tony Martinez, live from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Over the weekend, Javier Milei's enemies here in the United States outed themselves as fools when fake news spread about the Argentine libertarian president that he was signing off on gender transition hormonal treatments in the budget of the Argentine government. Took me 2 seconds to figure out that that was a blatant lie, and we got a good look at who Javier Milei's enemies are here in the United States. We had a nice little space on X.com last night where I gave an in-depth explanation of the people here in the United States who are spreading that lie, who are Javier Milei's enemies, why they are his enemies, why they are opposing him, and just exactly basically a full breakdown of the anatomy of the anti-Javier Milei forces here in the United States. And it's not the type of people you think. It's not left liberals and socialists who are Javier Milei's natural enemies. It is America firsters, groypers, and libertarians here in the United States, which was quite shocking and surprising to see if you are not an American and know how, well, just brain dead, jack damn stupid most American libertarians tend to be. Present company excluded, of course. If you're enjoying the content today, I do want to make sure that we get those likes added up. It helps us to grow the show, so make sure you do click like on Rumble and click that follow button. We'd be glad to have you join us here on the regs. Sign up Jonah here with us today over in the chat. T-Mill22, Bluetrike, Bell R, Quest Fanning, Helping Freedom, Lapa Yabrava 12. Hi, nice to see you. Glad to have you all joining us here live over at rumble.com. And I imagine we do have a nice audience probably starting to file in over at X.com as well. At 8:30 a.m. Central Time, we're going to hear from another friend of the show. Spike Cohen's going to be with us today on the show. It's going to be a bloodbath. A bloodbath, no. Spike Cohen to debate David Hogg of the Parkland shooting fame at Dartmouth. It's going to be an interesting debate on gun control. We're looking forward to hearing what Spike Cohen has to say to preview the debate. We're going to hear from him this morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. I'll be glad to hear your thoughts on that when Spike Cohen joins us at 8:30 a.m. on the show today. So we've got some awesome guests. John Miltimore, Tony Martinez live from Buenos Aires, and we've got Spike Cohen to preview his David Hogg debate. I mean, geez, this is an awesome show. It's already amazing. And we haven't even gotten to the content. The Daily Wire parting with Candace Owens after the right-wing firebrand spent months attacking Israel in increasingly heated terms and embraced quite a few bizarre conspiracy theories. Daily Wire and Candace Owens have ended their relationship, wrote the founder and CEO of Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring. He wrote this on Friday. Candace Owens said, "The rumors are true. I'm finally free." Interesting way to put that. She says there will be many announcements in the weeks to come. And of course, she threw up her YouTube page and said that she'll be back with her show after a brief hiatus. Now, Owens's commentary on the ongoing Israel-Hamas war and the U.S. support for the Jewish state recently caused a public rift between herself and Daily Wire co-founder Ben Shapiro. He is, of course, an Orthodox Jew and a strong supporter of Israel. Now, he and Candace Owens sparred last year after Shapiro called her views on Israel disgraceful in a viral clip of a party that he was attending. Owens said in reference to this viral clip, "No one can serve two masters." She says, "Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other." She says you cannot serve both God and money. Christ is King is trending on X.com this morning because of fellow Daily Wire commentator, or formerly fellow Daily Wire commentator, Andrew Klavan, who said that people are using the name of Christ in vain as a way to hide their anti-Semitic views. In a fairly interesting hour-long discussion on Andrew Klavan's show on Daily Wire. I've never really watched Daily Wire's content. I can say that from what I've seen of Andrew Klavan over the years, I typically like him. And from what I've seen of Candace Owens, I typically think her takes are fairly brain dead. As a useful tool against the left, I can imagine that Ben Shapiro probably saw that she was useful for a number of years. But with many of the things that she had said before she even worked at the Daily Wire, I think that he was always courting controversy, and this was a relationship that was destined to explode. Frankly, I was shocked that Ben Shapiro thought that that she was worthy of hiring after she had made. These are the comments that I had heard a dozen years ago that made me just write her off and decide not to listen to her anymore.
If Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German, everybody to look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism.
That's very curious because you did have an alliance with Italians who spoke Italian and Japanese who spoke Japanese, even going so far as to claim that the Japanese were honorary Aryans. That's obviously goddamn dumb. And people who speak stupid things about World War II, I typically tend to write off. So over the years, whenever I would hear Candace Owens referencing things like 9/11 in a sort of a conspiratorial way, not necessarily saying it's an inside job, but sort of referencing that it might be, and then other conspiracy theories, and defending Kanye West when he was saying things like this.
But they did good things too. We're going to stop dissing the Nazis all the time. But they did good things too. We're going to stop dissing the Nazis all the time.
Do we have to stop dissing the Nazis all the time, Kanye? Fascinating stuff there. Now, Michael Knowles, his comment came out on this, and he's in a difficult position. Here's what Michael Knowles, Catholic Christian over at the Daily Wire, had to say. And listen to how he explains the situation and how he feels about it.
This is great. Yeah, this news just broke about, I don't know, an hour or two before the show started this morning. So Candace has parted ways with the Daily Wire. I forget how exactly they phrased it. I think Jeremy announced it on his Twitter and said the Daily Wire and Candace have ended their relationship. So I don't have some grand statement to make about that. I don't think it's my place as a host on this network to make some grand statement about it. You know, because this is a very personal business and a personal company, a particularly personal company, you know the relationships already. You know that I am a close personal friend of Candace and the godfather to her daughter. Her husband, George, is one of my best friends.
Oh, it's right there. So Michael Knowles is in a bit of a pickle there in regards to how he handles this. And he had just gotten the news an hour before he was to make this commentary. You can't ignore news that is that huge. You have to respond to it. Andrew Klavan actually went into a much longer discussion about it, which we'll play some clips of here in just a moment. But imagine yourself, there are a lot of people who are criticizing Michael Knowles, calling him a coward for not speaking out more or not taking a stronger position, but he has a personal relationship with all of these people, and not everybody, I think, needs to die on the sword of whatever, outrage of the day there is. Not to say that, if he had taken a stand and made some kind of a statement, I wouldn't have said that he was brave, but I understand why people don't feel the need to trash their closest friends or the parents of their godchildren.
And you know that I've been at the Daily Wire for a very long time, since the very early days. You know, Jeremy Boring is one of my best friends. Even Ben, I'm willing to admit in a moment of candor, is a longtime friend of mine, as are Caleb and all the other people around here. So, always unfortunate when people go their separate ways, and that's life, I suppose. But that's really all I have to say about it. I don't. If you were hoping for some grand, epic speech on the future of media and the industry, I don't really have that. And if you were looking for juicy gossip and tea spilling, not only would I be unwilling to divulge any of that, but I don't really have any to give you. That's basically my view on it. And someone mentioned Candace.
Interesting. Now that's Michael Knowles' take on this. And the part of Andrew Klavan's speech in regards to this that got the most guff was this statement regarding the very popular trending word phrase this morning, Christ is King. Take a listen to this. Andrew Klavan is a Christian who converted from Judaism.
Grown. When I did this, by the way, the priest who baptized me said, Christians won't accept you. You'll still be a Jew. And I said, well, I am. That's my race. I'm a Jew. I'm proud of my race. It's
Pause for just a moment. Can you imagine, first of all, what it takes to convert a Jew from Judaism to Christianity? I mean, that is a huge, huge thing to happen. And the priest whose job it is to baptize you in the Christian faith says that Christians will never accept you. I mean, Andrew kind of sloughs this off like it's no big deal, but that's quite a heavy statement for someone of the Christian faith to say to someone. And I mean, I can't believe that he just kind of dismisses that in a moment. But I mean, that's his Jewishness showing. I mean, of course, there are a lot of Jews who are very sensitive whenever they're being attacked, obviously, because if you do criticize Israel, you will be labeled an anti-Semite, even if you're not. But there are a lot of Jews who are just like, who cares? Andrew Klavan seems to be the latter.
a great race, has done many, many great things, including write the Bible. And, I am a Jew, but that hasn't happened at all. Christians have welcomed me with open arms, except this Christ the King anti-Semitic crowd. Christ is the King, and one day every knee will bow and recognize it, because he's not just my king, he's king of the universe. But when you use that phrase to mean that God has abandoned his chosen people, the Jews, through whom he came into this world incarnate, and that he's broken his promises, his covenant with the Jews, you are quoting scripture like Satan does in the Bible. You are quoting scripture to your purposes, and that to me is specifically wicked.
Okay, pause for just a moment. So some people who aren't up to date on all of their theology or the conflicts between the major Abrahamic religions, and when I say major Abrahamic religions, I'm speaking about Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, the sons of the descendants of the tribe of Abraham. When he's talking about Satan quoting scripture, It is mentioned in the Bible that Satan can quote scripture in order to deceive. So Clavin is accusing what you might call the Groyper crowd, right? The Nick Fuentes types, the America Firster types, who we will be discussing as they are very much stated enemies of Javier Milei. And we'll be talking to Tony Martinez live from Buenos Aires about that and more at 8 a.m. Central Time. He is saying here, Andrew Clavin is saying here, that these people are satanic, that they are Luciferian, that they are using God's name in vain, and it is a cardinal sin to take the Lord's name in vain. This is what Clavin is accusing them of, and he is saying, Andrew Clavin, as a Christian who is an ethnic Jew, that while he believes Christ is king, he thinks that people will use that phrase and use the Lord's name in vain as in an attempt to deceive, as Satan had done in
You
the
are
Bible.
quoting scripture like Satan does in the Bible. You are quoting scripture to your purposes, and that to me is specifically wicked. When you spit that phrase at Ben Shapiro, my friend Ben Shapiro, and I understand this. All of you who love Ben, and I love Ben, and Jordan.
It's an interesting problem that Christians like Andrew Clavin find themselves in, because the Christianity is evangelical. It wants to save. It wants to get people converted to the Christian faith, whereas Judaism is not evangelical. It does not have a component that goes out into the world trying to convert people to its faith. It actively doesn't want you to join. If you can join, in order to join the Jewish faith, you have to go to a rabbi and ask him 3 times to join, and he will deny you 3 times until you return again. And then you have to go through the process, read the Torah and the scriptures, and do what the rabbi says in order to join the Jewish faith. Not so with Christianity. You can be saved on the spot and become a Christian immediately, and it is imperative that believers go out into the world and convert, or at least for the fundamentalist or the Protestant crowd. There is an evangelical portion of Catholicism that crusades, but it is not quite as evangelical as evangelicals, of course. So Clavin must feel very conflicted in that, of course, he wants to see his friend Ben Shapiro be saved by Christ, but he wants to defend his faith as a Christian, and he wants, he would like to see Ben be saved, but he sees the attacks on Ben Shapiro that are coming from the Luciferian crowd, as they would describe it. I'm a somewhat impartial observer from the outside. I consider myself to be a secularist. Formerly was a Christian and very, very devout for a large part of my early life. So I do have an understanding of the Christian faith and how conflicted Andrew Clavin must feel about this one and his desire to protect his friend. But of course, ultimately the Christian soul wishes to convert to Christ, the other souls to Christ. So Clavin is in a difficult
Peterson,
position.
you all want to see them find Jesus because you know what joy and freedom that gives you, and you certainly feel that it alters your relationship with God. But when I think about this, to be honest with you, and I know some people will disagree with this, but life is not a game show where you guess the name of God and you get to go to heaven. Honk, yes, the name is Jesus. I look at Ben's life and I think if Ben were to embrace Jesus Christ, it would cause devastation to his family, to the people who love him, to the people who listen to him, to his position in the world. I just have this feeling that God has put this guy where he wants him to do what he wants him to do. And as you know, I feel that, the Jews were not abandoned by God. I've grown.
That's an interesting problem for Andrew Clavin to face right there, and certainly he goes on to much more detail. Candace Owens and Dave Rubin and Andy Ngo had a conversation about this on Friday as well.
The political left is.
Okay, we're going to get a little spinning wheel there today. Just a moment.
The political left is obviously very happy whenever they can see the right in the United States be fractured or have issues of infighting. Um, uh, but at the end of the day, these are issues that have to be resolved. How do you reconcile very disparate views that exist on the right about the state of Israel? Obviously, there are views of Israel that go from criticisms all the way to hatred of the state of Israel, all the way to
A little bit of internet trouble this morning, but at least we are still streaming. So I'm gonna see if we can get past it.
criticisms, all the way to hatred of the state of Israel, all the way to anti-Semitism that exists on the far right. That's also an additional context to this story that I didn't mention earlier. That a lot of the online cheerleading of Miss Owens in recent weeks and months have come from the online so-called Groyper movement, which is extremely anti-Semitic. And hit pieces have been written about Miss Owens for this. I don't fault her, by the way, for what other people say and write about her, but her critics have also pointed out that she's failed to sufficiently distance herself from these people who have come now to cheer her on. And you can see these in the comments in the back and forths that have happened. So that's also part of the context here, that there are different factions at play who are reveling in this chaos, I would say.
See if we can squeeze a little
Leading
more
up
juice
to
here.
the her separation from Daily Wire this morning, last week, there was another spat that she had with another rabbi. And according to Mediaite, Ms. Owens had liked a post from another user who mentioned that the rabbi was, and this is the quote, drunk on Christian blood. Now, of course, that goes back to a very old anti-Semitic trope about blood libels in Jewish people. And Ms. Owens had also, in her public spats with this rabbi who had accused her of anti-Semitism, she did bring up his religion. So I wonder if that was really the breaking point. This is immediately really in the days preceding this morning's announcement.
So the possibility is that, and no one knows exactly why she was fired, but the possibility is that when someone was talking about the blood libel, which is an old anti-Semitic trope that Jews drink the blood of Christian babies, she liked that post, like put a heart underneath it in x.com, and for all we know, that could have
someone that has been treated quite poorly by the media yourself, and you've gone independent. You're on Locals also, which I'm thrilled about, and now you're doing your thing with Post Millennial. Can you talk a little bit about the platform publisher thing that I mentioned? Because I think it's an important distinction that people don't really understand. Candace and Daily Wire has every right to fire her. They will deal with the repercussions of that. But she's not being deplatformed as if she was on Twitter and then somehow Twitter was not allowing her. I think it's an important distinction to make.
No kidding. It is an important distinction to make, because it's not as if she's being censored or silenced. She's allowed to, no one, here's the thing, as an employer or someone who owns a media network, you shouldn't have to be forced to pay for speech that you don't agree with. I wouldn't hire somebody to work for me to do a podcast if they weren't at least somewhat liberty adjacent, if they weren't at least, right-leaning conservative who has some libertarian leanings, or a full-blown libertarian to a large extent. I wouldn't hire someone to go and do a podcast or a show to advance ideals that I'm not looking at advancing here. On the Wake Up America show and associated shows that I plan on producing, that content's going to be for the principles that I stand for, and I shouldn't have to be forced to pay for someone to advance ideals that I don't agree with. We're going to hear from John Miltimore about this one. Is Candace Owens anti-Semitic? John Miltimore says, no, she's not. I'll play some of those clips. We'll talk about it. We'll have a nice conversation when we get back. Don't go away. It's the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to wake up America. For memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Is the outdoor of your home about as exciting as a library? Then spice it up and unbore your space with our custom metal signs. Crafted with love and a bit of libertarian magic, you can customize your own metal sign at ap4libertyshop.com. So head to ap4libertyshop.com, customize your own metal sign today.
Welcome to a world of vocal discovery at Peterson Voice Studio. I'm Justin Peterson, here to guide your musical journey. Envision a place where your voice reaches new heights, where every note tells a story. We embrace all singers, from the enthusiastic shower vocalists to aspiring stars, ensuring each voice finds its unique rhythm and tone. Are you ready to elevate your voice? Visit Peterson Voice Studio.
Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Do us a favor, click that like button, follow the show if it's your very first time joining us here at rumble.com/ap4liberty. Click that follow button before you leave today. Come back and join us every Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. The Wake Up America show streams live, and we'd be glad to have you join us in the comment section as well. We're also streaming now over at x.com, and it's nice to see a big, healthy audience over there as well. Good morning, everybody. Do us a favor if you're enjoying the content over at x.com. Click the like button on the stream and repost. They don't call it retweeting anymore. They call it reposting. We've got 572 people joining us live there, and 200 over at rumble.com. About 700 people joining us live. It's a nice big audience, so thankful to have you here today. Let's get this show on the road. Candace Owens, is she an anti-Semite for many of the comments that she's made in the past? Some of her more conspiracy theory comments, people wondering. And why did she really get fired at the Daily Wire? Well, we might not be able to find that out today. Maybe not even at all. But let's hear from John Miltimore this morning, who says that he does not think that Candace Owens is anti-economic education. He's joining us live. Glad to have you here.
Hey, good being with you, AP.
John, Candace Owens fired from the Daily Wire. Maybe she leaves on her own. Maybe she was looking for an exit. There's, we could speculate from here to Sunday on the true reasons for her leaving. But I think that, it was fairly obvious the tension in recent months that was built up by the October 7th terrorist attacks on Israel by Hamas had led to a lot of people to start, sticking their noses into the conflict and offering their opinions. And the opinions that Candace Owens had were in direct conflict with Ben Shapiro, co-founder of Daily Wire. What's your take, big picture, on this whole situation? Because, it's just exploding online right now.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here for sure. I think the first thing you got to admit about this, you have two huge personalities, Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro, who see this issue differently. It wasn't hard to see that. Like you could see like tension building up, as you say, for weeks and months, in their tweets, in some of the other back and forth. This is a conflict that you talk to people, I have family members, this comes up and it gets toxic real quick. And it's a difficult thing to talk about. And I think that's one of the problems here. Shapiro, you have the Daily Wire, he's very involved in the operations. And there's good things about that, and there's bad things. I think one of the good things is if you're a Daily Wire fan, you see Shapiro all over the place. He's promoting their work, he's pushing their work. He's got a mass, and he's able to do that because he's a personality in himself. Now, with something like this, you have his views that are much more pro-Israel, and you have somebody, a correspondent or whatever you want, a commentator like Candace Owens. She has her opinions too, and they're in conflict with the boss. So what happens? I think we saw what happened. Eventually, Candace is pushed out. I do think, the Daily Wire is probably going to miss her to a degree. They're going to keep going on and doing their things. But I think the one thing I'd encourage people to have, go back to the New York Times in 2020, right? Like they had one of their editorial. I guess he was an editor of their editorial page. James Bennett, who was forced out because he ran that Tom Cotton column that was very controversial in the newsroom. That's kind of the job of these people. They're trying to explore these ideas at the edges. Do you want a publication that's going to be open to all these different viewpoints, or do you want to be one that's more focused on our viewpoint? I tend to, I say this, if you go to Fee, you know our content. We're
I
libertarian,
mean,
right? We
yeah,
don't
John,
host a lot of.
you wouldn't hire someone who was a democratic socialist to write articles defaming capitalism at fee.org. And if somebody did try and
Right.
do that, or at least started to lean that way, you'd fire them, but that wouldn't be you censoring them or silencing free speech.
Right. Well, again, not free speech, but we do have conservatives who looked at the James Bennett situation and did look at it as sort of a cancel culture issue, right? Glenn Greenwald made this point, and I think it's a good one. But I do think what you need to understand, and I say you, not like people need to understand, you need to know what your publication is. Fee is not a news site, right? Like we cover news, but we're a nonprofit who really understands our mission. Our mission's very clear. The New York Times is a news organization. The Daily Wire is a conservative, news publication, in a lot of different things.
Right. And they're not a nonprofit, they're a
They're
for-profit,
not,
and their job is
yeah.
to make as much money as possible. They brought in Candace Owens. I mean, Candace Owens had said some kind of dicey stuff before they hired her, and so they sort of, they kind of laid down in bed with the dogs, and they woke up with fleas to some extent.
Well, you could say the same thing about, Ben Shapiro and any number of writers at the Daily Wire. They've said controversial things. I think they like that. I think that's how they brand themselves. But this is their choice. What is our brand? I would like to think a publication like the Daily Wire is able to offer a lot of different viewpoints. And, and that includes Israel and Palestine. Partly, I think the world needs more voices coming out of there. I look at it, and I don't know, Austin, like you cover this issue a lot too. It's hard to know what to believe right now. And I'm seeing this. I have the United Nations and the State Department and these NGOs talking about mass famine in Gaza right now. And I read that scares me. It scares the hell out of me. I see some footage coming out of there that I think is bad. And other people tell me that this is mass propaganda. It's simply not true. What is the truth? I think, in all things, it's really getting at the truth is hard, but we get there by having more voices, more talented people covering these situations.
Okay, well, this is a good, broad, general overview. Let's get into some specifics here, John, because you said specifically that at least you tweeted this morning, correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't think that Candace Owens is anti-Semitic. Do you think it is anti-Semitic what Kanye West said, that the Nazis did some good things? We shouldn't say bad things about the Nazis all the time. And when he said that he's going to go DEFCON 3 on the Jews, is that anti-Semitic?
I mean, yeah, sure. I can call that
Okay.
anti-Semitic.
Okay.
It's,
Well,
I'm reading
Candace
a
Owens,
biography on Karl Marx right now, and I think he.
But the point is that Candace Owens said specifically that you'd have to be ignorant to think that that was anti-Semitic, or that you'd have to just, you don't understand what he means when he says something like that. Okay. So if she's not anti-Semitic, she seems to be running cover for them. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, we had a lot of people here in the United States who, during World War II, Dr. Seuss, there were a lot of people who were out who were saying things about Hitler that weren't, during World War II that weren't, they weren't specifically pro-Hitler, but there was a lot of cover being run for Adolf Hitler. Now, there were Adolf Hitler fans. But I mean, when somebody's kind of running cover for those kinds of statements or things like that, it does give one to wonder. I'm not saying Candace Owens is anti-Semitic, but she's definitely running cover for them.
Yeah, I think whenever you have a conflict like we're seeing in Gaza right now, between Palestinians and Israel, or you go back to World War II, what you have? You had the Nazis and communists. You had people that they felt they were forced to pick a side. And when you're forced to pick a side, you're going to get labeled. And that comes great risk. That's why, I think one of the things that we try hard at FEE, I know I try, is trying to capture, that gray area and say, no, I'm not pro Hamas, but I don't support like the atrocities, of a state government. And here's my question for you, Austin, and I don't want to get off, maybe you want to keep it on Candace.
We can get back there. Go ahead.
If we do have mass famine in Gaza, and this is a policy that Israel's cool with, is that okay? I'm just trying to get there with people, because a lot of people say, well, this isn't actually happening, and I'll concede that I'm not there. I'm getting images from CNN, who I've not trusted in the past. I'm getting the U.S. State Department and Tony Blinken, what they're saying. Do I trust them? I don't. But let's assume for a minute that there is mass famine in Gaza. And that is something that Israel is fine with. Is that okay? And for me, I can't accept that. I can't say, you know what, there's a greater good here, like we're trying to get Hamas, and if that means people starving, innocent people starving at a mass level, I'm fine with that. I can't say that.
Well, I can't say I'm fine with it, and I wouldn't say that I'm okay with it or that it's okay. But I mean, to what extent does Israel have some obligation to ensure proper food supply lines to the civilians in Gaza? I mean, do they have some kind of requirement? I mean, the people of the United States during World War II made every effort while the invading forces were moving through Europe and sweeping up Hitler's forces as they went through, to try and ensure that civilian populations were that were looked after the best they could. But bombing campaigns ensued. There was the bombing of Dresden and Nuremberg and of Berlin that of course would have civilian casualties. I mean, my problem with like what I think the American libertarian movement has become on foreign policy is a moral view of war that is a complete divestment of a tactical view of war. And libertarians have no actual seeming war strategy, because you can say all day long, oh, what about the children in Gaza who are starving? At the end of the day, what is this really but a sort of a moral blackmail to get us to do what, to feel what, and to try and do what, to accomplish what? If a war, if it, in any sense, could ever be just, it must be one to restore hostages. I mean, it's not as if Gaza or as if they're sitting there just fighting a war between two opposing forces here. We're talking about a terrorist group which holds hostages, many of which are Americans and some of which are Christians, by the way. They're not just Jews, for example. One would think that you would say that one side does bear one more moral culpability for this. And if there is any moral culpability for those innocent civilians who are starving in Gaza, it's not, the moral culpability does not lie on those who are defending themselves in this conflict and trying to protect the lives of their people. The moral culpability lies on the people who initiated the conflict and who are holding hostages. So I think I think that when we start to regress to the mean on this in this conversation, we seem to forget that somebody did initiate force here. Somebody sure as hell violated the NAP. and it was in Israel on October 7th. So do I care about the children who are starving? Yes, absolutely. Is war a terrible, horrible thing that should be avoided at nearly any cost? Yes, but I think the problem with the libertarian view on this in the American sense, and this is not a view, the foreign policy that American libertarians hold is not shared by libertarians outside of the United States, by the way, for reasons we can go into later. The problem, I think, is that the moral culpability should lie on the aggressor if we're going to do a moral culpability on this, and then two, what sort of war strategy could ever be engaged in that there's going to be it's not the 1700s anymore where people walk out into the middle of fields and shoot at each other in a line. Maybe we should, but it's not the Napoleonic Wars. It's not the American Revolution. I mean, at what point does what responsibility does Israel have to provide for the civilians on the opposite side of a conflict? Can you answer that, John? I mean, do the people of Israel have to be taxed in order to assume the responsibility for the civilians on the other side of the conflict?
The issue here isn't taxing Israel for this. It's simply having them allow these munitions to go through, because these are munitions coming in from other third parties, UN organizations and other places that are just
munitions,
trying to get.
You're talking about weapons, but you mean food?
I mean, yeah, munitions can include a lot of different stuff, and I know like some of the things they're saying, like they're rejecting it because there's a pack of scissors in the aid kit and some of these things. I think nobody's telling Israel, to my knowledge, that you have to provide that for them. We just want these things getting in there to civilians. And to go back to your previous point, I think you made a great point about this is a terrorist attack, and when you have an attack, you do. Terrorism is a fact of the 21st century. It was a fact of the 20th century as well. And when these things happen, they do require a response. But I think if you go back prior to maybe at least 9/11, when you had a terrorist attack, you didn't invade and occupy a country. It was like a police action, and you would go in there and deal with it. That was the counterattack. Instead of a full military engagement, you said we're going to use we're going to try to bring the people to justice through means other than war. I prefer that method. I think that's a more
I do too, but
it's just a more effective method.
That's not a moral stance. That's a tactical stance. And in the tactical stance, trying to place some kind of a moral stance above it is an enormous mistake, I think, that we make here in regards to the question of, because at the end of the day, after October 7th, somebody needed them some killing, right, John?
I said that Israel has every right to go in and crush Hamas, and I believe that's true.
Right,
I believe that's true now.
So, but then, in the end of the day, then what we're not arguing morals anymore. We're really just arguing tactics and the methods that are used to try and do it. And if you come in and you start trying to place some kind of a moral culpability one side or another, when you're in the middle of a conflict, you're going to get nowhere. And I think you're really going to make a lot of mistakes because the premise, I think, is unsound. But I want to bring it back to Candace Owens in this question. I mean, you would agree that the America First Groyper movement behind Nick Fuentes is explicitly anti-Semitic, right?
From what I've never met Nick. I've seen some of the things he said. He strikes me as not just an anti-Semite, but a little worm that I would not want to be around. This is like the things he said. I find really irritating, revolting, all the above. So yes.
Okay. So what we've seen in recent weeks, and I think this is probably what really led up to the firing, is that you see Nick Fuentes coming out cheering Candace Owens on in her debate with rabbis and the statements that she's made about Israel's conduct in the war. Israel's conduct in the war is absolutely up for debate. And, a true libertarian, especially an anarchist libertarian who hates all governments, absolutely can question the legitimacy of Israel's conduct during a conflict. And war is hell and a great evil and should be avoided at nearly any cost. So if Candace Owens was sounding like Ron Paul, then I think that she would probably be above reproach. But Candace Owens doesn't sound like Ron Paul. Candace Owens spreads conspiracy theories about someone might be, Emmanuel Macron's wife might actually be a man. Now, I make transgender jokes like anybody else, but I mean, when you have a history of making comments like these, and you're dead serious about it, or you sort of entertain 9/11 conspiracy theories, right? Maybe you're joking, maybe you're not. Again, listen, anybody can have a conversation from whatever side of any event that they'd like, and certainly asking questions is legitimate. But there is sort of this game that people play, John, and you're familiar with it, where people will make the statements of definitive fact, but then when they're questioned, they'll say, I'm just asking questions. You're familiar with this tactic, right?
Yeah, I think I've seen other people bring it up in relation to Candace.
Right. And do you think that that there's a little bit of that sort of game playing going on where it's like, oh, I'm not really questioning the Jews, right? I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm really just questioning Israel's policy and conduct in regards to their handling of the conflict with Hamas. I mean, I'm not stupid, John. I know the difference between someone who talks like Ron Paul and has a legitimate conversation about foreign policy, and then someone like Candace Owens who says things like, I'm paraphrasing here and it's not an exact quote, but if Hitler had just tried to keep nationalism within Germany, he would have been okay, but he wanted to globalize and spread National Socialism outside of his borders, and that's what really the problem was. I mean, there's a big difference between these kind of two
I watched
ways
that
of looking
clip,
at things. Yeah.
We talked about Brad Palumbo's take on this. I watched that clip. He shared that clip. I think Candace, sounded whenever you're talking about the Nazis, you got to be careful, right? And I think she wasn't careful and came out sounding really foolish. I don't think she was saying what Hitler was doing okay. It was just that he was trying to export it. And I think if you watch that clip, people can interpret that however they want. I don't think she's saying that. And if I look, it's she's done some good interviews with people of all sides on this. Like I haven't, I don't know what's in her heart. I'll be honest, I don't watch Candace. I don't watch her show. I don't read her stuff. I'm not going to go out and be like, oh, hell no, she's not. I haven't looked at her enough. I haven't seen anything she said that looks to me like, oh, she's an anti-Semite. I think she's now, does she harbor, some of that? I maybe, here's the thing. Humans do harbor bad feelings towards groups, like, let's be honest about that. Like, you can find any people of any, religion or color, and you see this, like, people do harbor those feelings. So does she? Maybe. Would that come out maybe in some of her reporting? Possibly. Yeah. I have not seen that. I think she's been trying to do this the right way. I think she's interviewing, pro-Israel people. She's interviewing a rabbi that's actually maybe more pro-Palestinian. She's getting voices. She's trying to be a good journalist. And as somebody who kind of floats in this space myself, this is hard to do sometimes, right? You always got to have an opinion on things. You always got to be, having that voice out there. Sometimes these things are complicated, and sometimes things are moving. Then we get new information that wasn't there before when we said something. And let's not forget, I think Candace Owens is a pretty young, public commentator. Like, what is she? Maybe early 30s, maybe at the latest or at the oldest. That's not an easy thing when you're out there every day coming up with opinions. And I'd say that to a lot of the progressive side of things too, they're trying to be opinion makers out there. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to say things sometimes that can be taken out of context, that can make you look stupid or racist or sexist. That doesn't mean that's what they are. You're not defined by one or two interviews or a bad take. And let's try to be gracious with people when they do that. Like, hey, I gave an interview just on the radio this morning and I had a brain fart. And I kind of I've done this a million times. And I smoothed it over. But you do interviews. Sometimes you sound like an idiot. Sometimes you again, I think of people on television that do this, it'd be way worse to have one of those on television. We see those when they happen and they go viral and you got 10 million views on it. And then, that sucks. But at least you're doing local news. When you're doing stuff.
No, it's true. No, at that level, though, I think there is a bit more responsibility.
True. No question.
There is more moral responsibility, the larger the platform, in my opinion. And people are going to make mistakes. And I think, Candace would admit that some of the things that she said over the years are dumb. So you know what? We all do. I've certainly made the same mistakes and things that I've said, John, and you or I do too. And in many ways, we're sort of like, we're criticizing people who have much larger platforms from us. And that's, of course, because people want to hear it. They want to hear these conversations because they're interested in these figures. I do appreciate
Ben Shapiro too. Let's include him. Just very quickly. Absolutely. Like, I like Ben. Ben's smarter than I am. Like, he knows his stuff. He's said a lot of dumb stuff over the years too. And like Ben though owns his own media company, and he's like, you know what? I'm not worried about it.
That's right. And Ben is not immune to criticism. either. And I think that when it comes to the question of Israel and Gaza and the United States, at least from what I've heard, Ben doesn't share our view, John, that the role of the United States should be to stay out of this conflict. Most American Jews that are political on the right tend to argue that the United States should supply arms, weapons, money, munitions, men, and anything that we can to support one side of this conflict. Now, I don't agree with Ben Shapiro on that, and I would criticize his view of that because I tend to be more non-interventionist on this one. My personal mind in terms of like a strategic view of the conflict, and from a 50,000-foot moral perspective, I tend to fall down on the side of Israel. Doesn't mean that I think that they're blameless or that they should be free of criticism. But at the end of the day, I don't agree with neocons who think that it should be the role of the United States government to step in and bolster Israel's security questions. As a matter of fact, I think that most of what happens and what is happening right now with Joe Biden in this conflict is that they're actually, grabbing their hands and trying to hold their hands up behind their back. You see that many of the actions of Joe Biden and the current administration is to try and hamstring Israel in their conflict with Gaza. And so I don't support that for that reason. For that, I'm non-interventionist for that reason as well. But anyways, John, I've got another guest coming up here in about 7 to 8 minutes from now. I've got about 2 minutes left here. Did you see that the Javier Milei was trending over the weekend, and there was some fake news that was being spread about him and this, that he was responsible for like this hormone treatment, et cetera, for all this. Did you see this story?
I saw the story. I did not read this story, but I saw some chatter about it on Twitter.
It's interesting how like the Javier Milei's enemies here in the United States, like most liberals and kind of the left, like they don't care about Javier Milei of Argentina. His biggest opponents here in the United States seem to be like the America First groypers, who hate libertarians, of course, anyway. So of course they're going to hate Javier Milei, and libertarians here in the United States, like Ron Paul's number 2, Daniel McAdams, on his foreign policy think tank, was out there spreading that bullshit. And I was just really surprised to see, I guess I shouldn't be, that Javier Milei's biggest opponents here in the United States are people who share his views on limited government. Maybe they don't share. Maybe Daniel McAdams doesn't share his views on limited government. Your thoughts?
It's really inexplicable to me when I see libertarians bashing Milei in this fashion, and not just bashing him, like making stuff up or pushing fake news about him. He's really the thing I think has the libertarian movement more energized than I've ever seen it in my lifetime, or at least going back to Ron Paul, like when in his day. But the difference is, Milei's running a country, and he's running a country right now that is falling to pieces, and he has an opportunity to save Argentina, who the poverty is close to 60% there, inflation's over 200%, and he can actually apply the right ideas to a country that's failing and turn it around. I really can't think of a better experiment for libertarian ideas, for free market ideas, than what we're seeing in Argentina right now. Why you wouldn't want that to succeed is something I don't understand. And I'm not as familiar with some of the people that are pushing this stuff maybe as you are, but I would want to sit them down and say, what the hell are you thinking? Like, what planet are you on?
John, anything else you want to say or plug before we let you go?
No, all good. Check out all our content on fee.org. You can see it right behind me. And check out, I'm on Substack at John Miltimore, The Take.
Got it. John Miltimore, editor-at-large of the Foundation for Economic Education. Thanks for your view on this one. Thanks for keeping us honest. It's a good conversation, and we'll be having it, I'm sure, a lot more until that conflict between Israel and Hamas ends, hopefully as soon as possible, so that we can hopefully take care of those innocent civilians who do not deserve to suffer from this conflict. Thank you, John. Have a wonderful day.
Appreciate you, AP. You too.
Thank you very much, John Miltimore, ladies and gentlemen. So who are Javier Milei's enemies here in the United States? We're going to find out. Tony Martinez is live from Buenos Aires, Argentina. He's joining us on the show in less than 5. Don't go away. We'll be right back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, you know, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Good morning, rise and freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. We're glad and thankful to have you here. It's 8 o'clock a.m. Central Time. What time is it in Buenos Aires, Argentina? Well, it's 10 a.m., just a few hours later. How do we know this? Well, we have clocks that can tell time, but we also have friends down in Argentina. We've got friends in low places. No, we won't say that. Tony Martinez is joining us now, friend of the show, joining us live from Buenos Aires. Buenos dias. Good morning.
Buenos
How are you doing? Good to see you.
Good morning, everyone. As I
Good
say,
morning.
have my gaucho, Argentine gaucho hat, and I've had my yerba mate.
Tony, we're glad to have you here joining us live on the program, and we're excited to talk to you a little bit about your adventures in Argentina. But we do have some big news that is trending worldwide alongside Javier Milei's name. Over the weekend, we had a conversation about this on X.com for a brief period. Over the weekend, news had spread that was spread mostly by American right-wingers here in the United States that Javier Milei was responsible for government spending that included hormone blockers for transgender youth in Argentina. This was used to smear him, and this news went around the world twice before the truth had time to get on its shoes. So what is the truth in this story, Tony?
Well, the truth is that there was a law, there's an Argentine law that had to be implemented, and basically Milei hasn't had the opportunity, and it has to be approved by the Congress to undo what was done. So it was really, he was forced to, to implement that, much to his probably disgust that they had to implement. But there's a lot of this law, but there's a lot of residue or remnants that he is dealing with of the insanity that has taken over or had taken over here in Argentina. The good news that I could say that I've seen since my last visit here is that I do see kind of inflation coming down, stable. It's not as crazy, and now markets are in play. I'm able to pay in dollars if I want. If you want to pay in euros, in other words, you can literally go and say you can either they'll give you a peso price, and you say I want to pay in dollars. They'll give you an adjustment or euros. So their market forces are starting to work, and that's encouraging. The real problem, though, here in Argentina is, it is a shock because as I talk to different people, and just with the time we have, I'm going to give you about 3 different perspectives that I got from the people there. The group, the demographic that is suffering the most are the minimum wage earners and the pensioners. They're the ones that are suffering from inflation the most because they really, how do they adjust? So this is the part that Milei has to be sensitive to take care of. They're really the most vulnerable in this adjustment. But at the same time, this is the urgency to unleash entrepreneurial market forces. As I talked to people and said, hey, Americans want to invest. And by the way, I'm going to be meeting with the U.S. Embassy later during my visit here and get a more deep dive understanding on what is that going to look like. And we could talk about that on a future show. It's a really delicate situation, but as the best example, this is like a patient that had been an addict that is going through withdrawal, and it's painful. There was a demonstration yesterday, a Sunday demonstration, unusual. As one man commented to me, and this is a guy who has 3 kids, and he said to me something profound. He said, for the last 20 years, we've been living in a subsidized society, dependent. We didn't really know what was the actual cost of things, and it has created a dependency. And now a lot of people who are stuck, particularly minimum wage and pensioners, they don't know what to do. So I would say it is a challenging moment, but the good news again also is everyone I spoke to said either one of 2 things. They don't have a better alternative, and the other was stay the course. Milei is right. As difficult as that is hard. And I spoke to, the guy that I spoke to with the kids, he didn't vote for Milei, he told me, but he did say Milei is right. And so I'll give him that. And he is doing what he says he's going to do. So
if you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm live with Tony Martinez. He is joining us from Buenos Aires, Argentina this morning for an update on the state of the economy down there and of the political position of their libertarian president, Javier Milei. Tony, I'd like to get back to the big news, the questions of the day that people are have burning questions on the topical questions that people are discussing about Javier Milei. And we had an hour and a half space last night on X. I'm sure many of the people who are joining us on X.com this morning probably heard that. Although for many who are joining us live at rumble.com, some people tune out on the weekends on politics. People like you and I were always on. So we have to kind of rehash a little bit about what we discussed last night. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, Tony, because I don't really know sort of like your, ideological leanings per se, but I guess a good way for us to edge sideways into that conversation. And I know you're a diplomat, and so you're, going to be careful and keep those cards close to your chest. But I would be curious, at least your level of knowledge of the anatomy of the critics of Javier Milei in the United States. I mean, obviously, progressives and socialists are going to be resistant to Javier Milei's takeover and desire to liberalize their economy. But we don't really see the same kind of criticism from the American left as we do from the American right. Are you familiar with the anatomy of Javier Milei's U.S. critics?
Somewhat, and to the extent I just simply would say, because I've noticed this in terms of human nature, I think sometimes people get upset when their someone, it's when someone's doing or accomplishing what they're saying they're going to do. I'd say some of that antipathy to Milei is really masked jealousy and envy. The guy is getting things done. The guy is succeeding. The guy is telling the truth. And they are trying to do everything they can to say, no, you're not. You're full of it. But the truth is, he is being consistent to his word. And the proof is in the pudding because the guy walks the talk. And I mean, just, over the weekend, he was in a...
But the strategy to attack him thus far, Tony, seems to be to take things that his opponents have done before he was in office and then pin the blame on him, the inflationary crisis.
Yeah, oh yeah, sure. But you see, they assume that the average Argentine is stupid, and they're not. Because when I talk to and I spent time talking in depth to 3 different demographics of Argentines, they know that, Milei is not responsible for this, that he's inherited all of this madness. I've likened it like the political caste. I mean, the best description, like vampires, that are sucking the quality of life, money, and future of Argentines, all for the sake of empowering themselves. And people know what the gig, the jig is up, and so there's going to be a lot of pushback on this and a lot of nasty double dealing and trying to embarrass or make Milei look bad. And in the case of opposition from the States, it's rather unfortunate because Milei is actually a figure we should be looking at to mirror and replicate in the American way, which is not necessarily going to be exactly like Argentina. It's a different culture, different history, but it's the same, same principles, personal freedom, economic opportunity, all those kinds of things. I'm not surprised. We're in a time where we're not rooting for people when they're succeeding. We want to point out or go out of our way to say, oh, that he's just like everybody else. He's full of it. So
certainly there's a religious aspect to the criticism, to the critiques of Javier Milei. He was born and raised a Catholic. He has a good relationship with many prominent Chabad Jews. He's visited Israel. His foreign policy is one that is very pro-West, and that's going to make him enemies. Can you speak to that?
Of course, oh, sure, but I mean, the world isn't Judeo-Christian, but this is the perspective that Milei believes in and supports, and made a very persuasive argument that the growth of Western civilization comes from Judeo-Christian principles, and obviously there's pushback from people who are not, and from cultures who are not, who feel the competitive, rivalry from that. So.
Do you think that some of Javier Milei's
I'm not.
I guess what I'm trying to get at, Tony, is do you think that some of Javier Milei's critics are such because they're bigoted?
Probably, yeah. I think there is some of that, because bigotry is also, again, another form of ignorance, arrogance, all of that related to the dynamics of human behavior. And this is all dark side stuff.
Very dark. It is very dark, yeah. Tony, and that's why I hosted that space last night, so that people could get a better idea for the anatomy of Javier Milei's critics in the United States. Many of them are what you might call America First groypers, and many of them are people that might consider themselves to be libertarians. And for them, the reasons of they critique him could run the gamut of anything from, oh, we don't like the fact that he's going to try and dollarize their economy because we're not fans of central banks, all the way over to the darker.
That's exactly. They're just looking for points to say, to point out that he's full of it, or he's not who he says and it's really unfortunate. The guy is doing everything he can to turn around literally madness. When I commented to the people when we were using the vampire, I said Milei is like Von Helsing, going after all the Draculas.
The
And
power of Christ
unfortunately,
compels you.
yeah, and the other folks there are like Frankensteins. They're looking for brains.
Hey, Tony, since we've got you here and you are live from Buenos Aires, Argentina, let's talk a little bit more about, kind of the boots on the ground reporting stuff here. I mean, you've had these conversations with Argentines. I mean, you've talked to them about Javier Milei. What I'm hearing from the United States, and you can now report from a firsthand basis. What I'm hearing is that Javier Milei has the support of the people, but it's the caste, the political caste, the political class who are almost entirely united against him. Can he maintain that support from the people? What does the average Argentine say about Javier Milei?
Okay,
Talk to us about this.
So I talked to a highly skilled professional engineer and his wife, and they voted for Milei, and they told me, they said, Milei is right. And he said, and this time when we voted for our grandchildren. He just said, it's not fair what's been going on, that our grandchildren are going to have to shoulder this burden. And so we have to, we took it upon ourselves to make sure that we voted for the real change, the contextual, structural change. And I mean, my term for this political caste, I'm calling them the vampire class, because they're not contributing anything. They're taking from the people. They're not giving. And Milei, contrastly, he's giving back people their freedom. For some people who've never been free, it's kind of like the shock. There's some, laboratory animals that have spent decades in a cage and then they're brought to a sanctuary and they're released into freedom, and they don't know quite how to adjust, and then they realize that it's a whole new world of opportunity for them. So this guy, he did point out, though, he said the youth is split. There is youth here. One guy I spoke to was a college-age Uber driver. He just said to me, I voted for Milei. Said he's the only way. So if Milei hadn't won, he said, I would have left the country. He says, I'm really, my friends and I are here, and we're staying, and we're doing everything we can to become entrepreneurs. And I told him, I said, hey, stay faithful to this. I said, because I can tell you, in the United States and other countries, people want to come and invest in Argentina. I mean, it is really beautiful. This is a beautiful country, Austin. When you and Stephanie and Hazel, baby Hazel, come to see this place, you're going to be amazed at the beauty that this country has. I'm looking forward with the kids who didn't vote for Milei but conceded that he was right. He just said, there's no future for my kids if we don't make these changes now. But he said, but Milei, this guy pointed out to me, he said, Milei has got to take care of. He said, there's so many people here who are minimum wage earners and pensioners that are really suffering. And so that's going to be the challenge for Milei. And that's the vulnerable group that the vampire class is trying to take advantage of and get them rallied up and stirred up to demonstrate. But, yesterday there was mass demonstration, but there was no violence. I didn't see anybody arrested or anything destroyed. So that was good. And actually, the police controlled it so that traffic and movement could flow. There was some place they had to stop, but it wasn't chaotic. So the basic themes coming out from people that I spoke to was, a reluctant acceptance and still faith in Milei. And they also pointed out that the elections were coming next year, and that they were going to, that Milei needs allies in the Argentine Congress. And I think that's going to be the next evolution in this.
That needs to be the next part of our conversation here, but let me reset for those who might just be tuning in to the Wake Up America show. Good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. I'm glad to have you here. Thanks so much for tuning us here into the live stream here on the show. We are streaming live at rumble.com/AP for Liberty, where 427 people are watching us live. Good morning to everyone there. Please do click that like button. And if it's your first time watching the show over at rumble.com, make sure you click that follow button as well so that you can find us easily when you want to come back here and join us again anytime Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. And we have, as of last week, begun streaming the show over to x.com, where 1,319 people are watching us live, which means 1,800-ish or so people joining us live right now. Thank you for joining us here. If you're enjoying the content that you're watching on either Rumble or X, do us a favor and share our stream with your friends. You can click the like button below the stream and then click repost to post the stream onto your feed so other people can join us here live. Please introduce us to your friends. If you do enjoy this content, it really helps us to grow, and we're very grateful to have you here. Let's talk about then briefly for a couple of minutes here, Tony, about Javier Milei's next move, because he doesn't have support amongst the political class. He doesn't have a majority in Congress. He's not a dictator, so he can't just rule by fiat. He's made some incredible changes, but what needs to happen next in order for him to actually get rid of, say, the hormone replacement therapy money that's being spent by government, or to introduce his deregulatory measures permanently in order to actually see some recovery in the Argentine economy? What's the next move?
Well, again, staying on the economy is, again, staying the course of working it out to acquire a sufficient reserves so that they can pay off the bonds and then have enough reserves to do the conversion to the dollar, to dollarize. And it isn't something that can be done, overnight. And Milei is applying the experiences of other economies that have dollarized so that he can lessen the shock and the changes that come from that. So I think we're going to continue to see inflation going down. They're on track now to reach single digits by the end of the year. And people have to understand that the damage that has been done is from decades. So to expect everything to be normal and stabilized within just over more than 90 days, that's unrealistic. This is going to take time. Similarly, on the political end, Milei's approach has been to shed light and to put transparency, and also in a very eloquent way question the rationale for some of these laws and exposing some of the absurdity and the abuse that has come from this. And that also takes time for some people to digest. I mean, I was looking at this demonstration yesterday. My brain was going off, who's funding all of this? Because, there's all these great signs and all of this like organization. So clearly
Socialists are usually fairly poor.
Exactly.
How do communistas have all this money for these really nice quality signs in this protest against Javier Milei, right?
Exactly. But again, Milei, his humanity and his commitment to being an integrous individual, that has been his best shield and sword to deal with all of this. I mean, he went to a show and sat in the audience like any other Argentine citizen, no special treatment, was with his girlfriend. He's really trying to maintain humility.
Yeah, but as he entered the theater, the whole crowd just went crazy for him, which was
But again, it's because of that humility. And they give him the space. They respected him. They're not, all jumping on top of him.
I would have jumped on top of him. Hey, Tony, one last question before I let you go. So obviously the AP for Liberty shop has the best Javier Milei merchandise anywhere in the world. It's the only place where you can get the famous afueras, right? The zapatillas. It's the only place where you can get the Viva la Libertad Carajo necklace, right? Now, we do sell some Javier Milei mugs, But there is a thriving industry I see now in Argentina. We got a little competition down there in Buenos Aires because
Yes.
it appears as if Javier Milei merchandise is prolific in Argentina as well. You saw a lot of that stuff on the streets, eh?
And he said, wow, that's cool. Can you
Yeah.
get me a pair? I said, absolutely.
I'm going to pull those up here real quick on the screen for those who are watching us live right now. You can see, here's some pictures of Tony.
And then, like I said, I said, you know, Austin has coffee, and now he's going to add yerba mate. You know,
yerba mate, yes.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, no high plata. That means I don't have any money.
There's no money. Oh,
there's no
that
money.
was another expression. Everybody has an idea on how to spend other people's money or the government's, and Milei just keeps saying no hay plata. There's no money.
And I'm curious about this. Well, the Florida Memorial University. How is there a Florida license plate that says Milei in Argentina?
I have no idea. You know, I was looking for, and here's a thought. The Las Fuerzas del Cielo, so the forces of heaven hat. That's something you may want to add. The Maccabees, Book of Maccabees, chapter 3, verse 19. Yeah, so that's another thing that Milei loves to say.
Tony, you're having a great time down there in Buenos Aires. You've already had your asado. Did you have any chimichurri on it?
Of course. Oh, and this was the chimichurri. I had some great wine. I'm headed to wine country also, because that's something you can't miss. If you're into
I'm jealous.
wine,
I'm jealous.
you gotta, well, you're going, so you know we'll all go. I mean,
it's still up in the air a little bit.
And you know, in December it's summertime.
I know we are hoping that we're going to get those plans confirmed here fairly soon. Tony Martinez, anything else you want to say to our listeners or a plug before we let you go?
Well, thank you again, once again, and just want to encourage the audience. We talk a lot about Argentina, but the best way for you to understand is to make plans and visit the place. It is a long trip, but if most flights leave at night and you get there in the morning, and you know, Argentina is poised to be probably with Milei in office, the United States probably most significant allies in South America, and we need allies in the Western Hemisphere.
Right, we do.
We really do.
Tony Martinez, U.S. Latin American envoy. Follow him at x.com. He's live from Buenos Aires. What a great report. Can we give it up for Tony Martinez? Antonio,
take care.
Gracias, amigo. Have some fun.
All right.
We'll see you soon.
On my way.
All righty. Take care. Take care. That is Tony Martinez. Indiana Tony. Take care, Tony. All right, guys. Well, what did you guys think of Tony Martinez? We got even more. It's going to be a bloodbath. Spike Cohen debating David Hogg. He's going to come up here next and talk to us about that. But it turns out, looks like the federal government is setting up a federal red flag law center to take away our Second Amendment rights. Let's talk to Spike about that when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. It was 1946. A battle was fought, not overseas, but right here on American soil. The Battle of Athens, an intense struggle against election fraud and for the rights promised by our founding fathers. Driven by the Second Amendment, ordinary citizens stood tall and fought back. Help us expose this momentous battle of integrity and bravery. Your support can make a difference. Visit givesendgo.com/bleedamerican and pledge your support, because we believe in the power of truth, the strength of unity, and the spirit of we the people. Let us not forget, we bleed American.
Fire. Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Petersen stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apeforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apeforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit aporlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Thankful to have so many people tuning in, joining us live. 500 people joining us live over at rumble.com. It's nice to see you all over there. Lou Grubb, Bitchmobile, love that name. Lou Grubb, Mighty Megatron, Glocos, 0422, Laura Kendrick joining us. She says she wants to go to Argentina. Steffi for Liberty, good morning. My lovely, sweet, smoking red hot, red-headed libertarian girl joining us live too. Nice to see you all here. And our newest platform at x.com with, wow, 1,471 people joining us live over there today. Almost 2,000 joining us live. I'm glad you're here. Let's be friends. All right, well, you know it's going to be a bloodbath. And don't freak out. Spike Cohen of youarethepower.net joining us live on the show right now. Good morning, Spike. Nice to see you again, sir.
Good morning, Austin. Thanks for having me back on, man.
Hey, glad to have you here. Obviously, we're excited to hear the news about your debate, and everybody's going to be cheering you on that are very pro-Second Amendment, Spike. We'll talk about that a little bit later. There's something a little bit more universal that I think people are concerned about. Our mutual acquaintance, Thomas Massey, had tweeted
by asking, under what authority are they even being granted the ability to do this? We're still trying to find that out. But the bottom line is this looks like the typical way the federal government tries to coerce/persuade states into doing what they want. They're setting up this federal red flag center, which is to streamline the process, which means, of course, throw lots of money at it. This was timed at the same time that Kamala Harris went down to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School in Parkland, Florida, to commemorate the anniversary there and to call for all states to implement red flag laws and to use federal funding from the so-called bipartisan gun violence bill from back in 2022. So we can thank Marco Rubio to create swatting bills in their own states.
Red flag laws, obviously very controversial. The biggest challenges that we tend to face as believers in liberty and individual liberty, and that the rights really don't come from government, and that the Second Amendment only writes down the rights that we individuals have, Spike. The
Yep.
question of a red flag law is a difficult conversation to have with the average American citizen, because at the end of the day, I think if you ask the average American citizen, they would all probably say, well, yeah, I'm pro Second Amendment, but crazy people shouldn't be allowed to have guns. What do you say to somebody like that if you're not trying to alienate them, Spike? What's your sort of line of attack, if you will, or how do you convince someone who is, generally pro gun rights, but is concerned that somebody who has a history of mental illness or has displayed some tendencies or has been diagnosed with perhaps schizophrenia or bipolar disorder? How would you sort of respond to someone that you might have an average citizen that you'd have a conversation with about that when they voice those very real concerns?
Right. So the first thing I'd say is in all 50 states, if someone is deemed to be an active threat to the public or to a specific person, they can have their guns seized. They can be detained on a medical hold. There are already things that are in place for that. Right. What red flag laws do are weaponize the ability of your, nosy neighbor or someone that doesn't like you on social media to send a SWAT team after you if they don't like something that you posted, with basically little to no due process. The next thing that I would say is that when it comes to mental illness, something like well over 20 or 30% of Americans are actively seeking therapy, and close to half of Americans at some point will seek therapy for what will be a diagnosed mental health issue. If you create a situation where people who are battling or have battled mental health issues, PTSD, bipolar disorder, or any of these things, are not allowed to own their firearms, the more mentally unwell they are, and especially the more paranoid they are, the less likely they are to seek mental health treatment because they don't want to give up their guns. So now they still have their guns and they're not getting mental health treatment. That doesn't help anyone.
A liberal judge recently made national headlines when she threw out a case against an illegal immigrant who was in the United States, who was caught during a protest while in possession of a firearm. And everyone is having this debate about whether or not people who are in the United States Amendment rights. Many conservatives say, no, the Second Amendment only applies to citizens, and people who may be coming here to do us harm, like cartel members, or, for example, people who commit acts of human trafficking here in the United States, are dangerous individuals of which we would not tolerate gun permission. If terrorists wanted to come to the United States, we wouldn't allow them to walk around with AK-47s. What's your reaction to that case, Spike, and the conservative backlash to the concept of an illegal immigrant having a firearm here in the U.S.?
Well, I would say the same thing to my well-meaning friends on the right that I would say to my well-meaning friends on the left, that if someone is an active danger, if someone is a known cartel member or is, in the process of being investigated for committing a crime or something like that, or if they're here illegally and the government is in the process of rounding them up to deport them or whatever, that is a separate issue from the question of if someone who has not been convicted of anything has a natural right to own a firearm. And the Second Amendment doesn't grant us that right, just like nothing else in the Bill of Rights grants us any right. What it affirms us is our natural God-given rights to these various things: freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and so forth. And it actually is not, it doesn't apply to citizens. It applies to the government to say that it shall not infringe on the people's rights, which has been defined many times, including by the founders, as meaning any people within the presumed jurisdiction of the U.S. government. So yes, this was a correct ruling. If he is supposed to be deported, then he's supposed to be deported. But that's separate from the question of if he is here and has not been convicted of anything, does he have the right to own a firearm?
Sort of what your plan of attack is to a certain extent, right? How do you have a debate with someone whose arguments are largely going to be based on emotion and not on facts and logic? Are you hoping to convince people?
Dartmouth University. And if you go to spikecohen.com/gun debate, all of the information is there, how you can watch it when it's being live streamed. I would say if you could register, but just about a couple hours after I posted the link a few days ago, it sold out. So apparently, unless you're a student at Dartmouth, there are no more tickets left. But the way I'm going to approach it is this. There are emotional arguments that can be made for just about anything, including the right to keep and bear arms. I have used many times, I've used essentially emotional based arguments saying things like, how many more children have to die before we recognize that gun free zones are no such thing? They're simply a fish in a barrel zone for would be murderers to know that no one else is going to have a firearm. And you can do this with any of the things, red flag laws, any act of gun control, any kind of mandatory buybacks or anything like that. I'm also going to be sticking to the facts. Where the way the debate's being structured is where it's in different sections. So one is about public safety and violence. One is about the Second Amendment itself and the nature of that. One is about applying the Constitution to this, and one is about the actual legal arguments for and against. So on each of those things, I'm going to be applying that argument. But at the end of the day, the facts are on our side. And I will be laying them out. And yeah, my goal is for anyone who is on the fence or anyone who thinks they support gun control but might be persuadable, by the end of this thing, I want them to be on our side.
What do you think where do you think he's going to come from?
Focuses a lot on the fact that these shootings happen and that they're a terrible thing. And then he goes straight to what he calls the solution, which is, gun control. The interesting thing about David Hogg is he's actually not a take away all guns person. He is very specific on the things that he wants. He wants to get rid of so-called assault rifles. He wants there to be mandatory buybacks on semi-automatic rifles and universal background checks and those types of things. So it's not going to be a pro-gun versus completely 100% anti-gun debate. But in my mind, that makes it a little bit easier, because if he already recognizes that we have a right to keep and bear arms, it's a lot easier to build out that conversation than with someone who thinks that all guns are bad and all guns should be banned. But I think his argument is largely going to be an emotional one, and that is the typical argument of the gun grabbing side. And it's pretty easily debunk that by showing the facts of what happens when gun control is implemented in the U.S.
I love that term buyback, as if I bought my gun from the federal government in the first place.
Yep.
Yeah, I never bought it from them. So,
and the crazy thing about that is that if you applied that same background check that they want to the government, they would never qualify for the guns that they want to buy back from you.
They have a long history of physical and emotional and mental abuse.
Violence, violent crime, theft, mass murder. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, they're the biggest arms dealer in the world. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm Austin Peterson, and the handsome mug of that gentleman joining us live right now is Spike Cohen of youarethepower.net. We're talking to him a little bit about his upcoming debate with David Hogg on the gun control question at Dartmouth, and is very excited, hotly anticipated. We do hope that he will live stream it so that many of us will be able to tune in, and we're excited to watch him clean it up. On a separate topic, I saw that you were embroiled in some debate regarding the governor of Georgia over the weekend, Spike. And please forgive me, I didn't have time to really dig into the details, but sure. I saw that you were taking aim at the governor of Georgia for some reason. I was hoping you could talk us through this.
Absolutely. So my organization, You Are the Power, we find people who are being abused by their local governments, and then we organize to fight until they win. One example of that, or actually multiple examples of that, we are uncovering multiple families whose children have parents whose children have chronic health disorders. They take them to a children's hospital. A child abuse physician says that they have been abused with no evidence of abuse, and actually all of the evidence showing that the kids aren't being abused and have a chronic health problem. And then they're being essentially trafficked through Georgia's Division of Family and Children's Services. The parents are railroaded with fake abuse charges that they're never actually charged with because they have no evidence of it. They just hold that over their heads to try to get them to just give up their kids. We're finding that there are former DFACs, that's what they call it, the DFACs workers, who are coming forward, who are telling us that they were told they would be fired if they weren't calling every case that was put in front of them abuse. We have family court judges that are ignoring medical evidence in court. We have child abuse pediatricians who are being brought in from other states who resigned in disgrace because they were falsely accusing parents of abuse, but they're more than welcome in the Georgia system. And we're calling on Governor Kemp to meet with us and these families to talk about the nightmare that his government is putting them through under his watch, the problems that are causing it, and the fixes that need to be implemented to end this nightmare for them and for thousands of more Georgians across the state.
Well, I admire your work there with youarethepower.net, Spike. It certainly is good to see that libertarian activism involves more than just podcasts and speaking out, in our communities, that you're actually getting out there and putting boots on the ground to fight for liberty. We admire that, Spike, and thank you for doing that kind of work. It's definitely very necessary. I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about electoral politics. If you have a couple of minutes, I'd like to ask you, and this is an unfair way to phrase this question, but it's what I'm really curious about, and you can answer it however you like. But I mean, what happens to the Libertarian Party in your view, Spike, if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. becomes the nominee?
I think it becomes an existential question for the party because it's interesting because the argument for RFK Jr. being the nominee is that he could get us ballot access, get us more attention than we've ever had before, get us a higher share of the vote than ever before, maybe even get us 5% or more, maybe even get us on the debate stage. All of that is true, but at that point, libertarianism and the Libertarian Party will be inextricably linked to a single man who pushes for gun control, universal health care, has talked about favorably about climate lockdowns in the past, has called for people that say climate change isn't real or who are skeptical of climate change to be arrested for it. Even now, still tries to say that he's not supportive of taking guns for now, which is a hell of a qualifier there. And so, if you thought that, Gary Johnson sticking his tongue out or some guy dancing naked on the stage 8 years ago at this point was an embarrassment for the party, what happens when the average American, the only thing they've ever heard of libertarianism is a far left progressive Democrat who used our line to get ballot access? I think it's an existential question for the party. And frankly, if I'm going to sell out my principles for electability, I'll just rejoin the Republican Party and try to make it more libertarian. At least then I'm taking a party that's less libertarian and trying to pull it in my direction. And as a bonus, they actually win elections, like a lot. They win about half of them. Why would I take a party that doesn't win elections but is tied to my ideology and push it in a more authoritarian direction in order to get ballot access?
Join me in the Republican Party, Spike, and together we will rule the GOP as father and son. Listen, I wouldn't put it past the LP to do it because at this point in time, I think a lot of people assumed Dave Smith was going to run, be the nominee, and kind of give that true north version of libertarianism that a lot of people, especially in the Mises caucus, who took over the party, wanted to see. But since then, he's sort of backed off. You're not running, Spike. What's going on, man? Like, you could probably, it would be a layup for you to take the nomination at this point. I mean, who are these people that are running? I mean, I like Josh Smith as a guy, as a friend, and I think he would be a decent candidate, but he doesn't seem to have the mojo. They want this Michael Rechtenwald character who's some former Marxist. I don't know much about him. I don't see him taking the Libertarian Party to any commanding heights. Kind of in a tough spot there, Spike. What do you got? What's got to happen? I mean, are you supporting anyone in that race?
Thing that I've said, then that's a bigger problem than who I've picked or who I haven't picked. What I will say is this: I do believe that the delegates are going to pick an actual libertarian. I will also say aloud that it would be very interesting if a man who was not a libertarian but brought way more attention than any of us would bring came to our convention with all of the media and someone showed up and upset him. That would be an incredible thing for national and international media to cover, and tens of millions of people to wonder how that just happened and who this surprise nominee was and how that why libertarians would pick this person instead of RFK Jr.
Why didn't you run, Spike? I mean, you're so damn likable, right? So cute, right? You get all the people. You don't piss people off, yeah. Right? You don't piss people off for the most part, right? I would say you're fairly uncontroversial to a large part of the libertarian movement. But I mean, you have your moments like anybody else. But I mean, why didn't you run, Spike? It seemed obvious. You were the VP slot in the last campaign. It seemed like it would have been a layup. Why not run?
Well, I have never actually said I'm not running. What I'm doing right now is uncovering child trafficking operations across the country, and I'm fighting for people that are losing their homes and their businesses because of out of control local governments. And in doing so, I'm growing the liberty movement. I've found a very useful purpose with what we're doing with You Are the Power. With that said, you never know what's going to happen in the future. And I'm not actively seeking anything, but I will say this: if it comes down to an upset or the party ceasing to exist, then that will be a very tough choice that I will have to make. But I will say that.
Very careful parsing of words from Spike Cohen. You are the power.net. Spike, is there anything that we missed that you'd like to share with us before we let you go, or any last minute plugs?
If you want to check out the gun debate, spikecohen.com/gun debate. That's got the live stream info. And well, again, you can't register anymore. It's sold out, but it will have the live stream there once it's available. And it's on April 10th. So be sure to check that, April 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you want to help us fight to get families reunited and to get the criminal or the Child Protection Service in Georgia reformed in a serious way and help end a nightmare for thousands of Georgians, go to youarethepower.net/GA. And as always, thanks for having me on, man.
Hey, Spike, thanks so much for being generous with your time and joining us live this morning, and good luck in the debate. We know that you're going to do well. We'll be watching that live stream, and we'll check that out at your website, and keep up the good work. Thanks for calling them out, Spike. We appreciate you very much, and take care.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
That's Spike Cohen. You are the power.net. Make sure you check him out. I'm excited for that debate, aren't you? That's going to be fun. Wow. Man, this show can just be, I tell you, it wears you out, exhausting. Getting your butt up at 4:30 in the morning. I can't tell you how much I appreciate my sweet wife, Stephanie Peterson. I love her so much. You know, just a little personal stuff. You know, she's, what, 5 or 6 months pregnant now at this point. And this morning, you know, we weren't able to be in the studio. So whenever like things are kind of changing around here, like I've got to scramble at the last minute in the mornings to try and get the show set up somewhere else so that I can still bring you the Wake Up America show. And there's only one other person who really knows how to set up this setup other than myself, and it's Steffi. So she volunteered to get her little pregnant butt out in the morning to come and join me in the freezing butt-ass cold, to come join me downtown in Jefferson City to help set up the show, even though she's got to work this morning. And then she drove back home, and she's going to join me today for my doctor's appointment to go up to Columbia and then come back. And then tonight we're going to go see Grover Norquist here in Jefferson City at 7 p.m. And then it's just, you know, Camelia's coming over to spend the night. It's just going to be a wild day. And Stephanie is with me every step of the way. Look, it's Liz says, build a home studio. I would love to do that. The only problem is that there is no internet out in the country. So I would love to build a home studio, but I cannot do so at this time because they just don't have the internet out there. And without the internet, we cannot do the Wake Up America show. We need the juice. Speaking of the juice, I know many of you are saying, Austin, what about the bonus content? I didn't have bonus content for you today because I had too much other stuff to do to build the show in a completely different location. Although I am hoping that we are looking to do the Wake Up America show from different locations in the future, other places where we might actually have internet. We've got a coffee shop in town who has offered to host us and to produce the show from there. I think that would be kind of fun. It'd be kind of interesting to do the Wake Up America show from some other locations. Potentially we'll be doing it from Buenos Aires, Argentina this December if I manage to swing that Bitcoin conference speaking gig. It was a great show this morning. We talked about Candace Owens versus Ben Shapiro, and we talked about the conflict in the Middle East. John Miltimore was on the show. We had Tony Martinez live from Buenos Aires, Argentina. We just spoke to Spike Cohen about his debate with David. His debate. He could date if he wants to date David Hogg. He could. Right? We're libertarians here. But if you enjoy the Wake Up America show, just think about how much work goes into putting together this show for you. A pregnant woman getting up at 5 a.m. and coming out here just so that we can bring that to you. So the least you can do is click that like button, right? Can we get a little like? Maybe a repost if you're on X.com. And as you exit the show, make sure you exit through the Grift Shop. Check out ap4libertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, ap4libertyshop.com, where you can get all kinds of awesome Javier Milei merchandise. You can take that fridge magnet and also stick it on the back of your vehicle. Get that at ap4libertyshop.com. You can get it exclusively at AP, the number 4, ap4libertyshop.com, where we got cool Pepe merchandise as well. Javier Milei Afuera sneakers. Our founding flavors coffee is calling your name. It's absolutely delicious. Remember, that price that you see down there looks scary, but that includes shipping. And if you compare us with shipping to some of your other premium brands that you buy online, our prices are actually just a little bit lower. So get yourself a box at ap4libertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, ap4libertyshop.com. How did we do? Was it a good show? Okay. Now I got to break down this set entirely, put it all away, make sure it's nice and tidy, come in tomorrow morning, 4:30 a.m., do the exact same thing, and hope to God that by Wednesday the studio will actually be put together. I know, you don't feel bad for me. You don't care. But if you do care and you want to help support the show, again, make sure you like, subscribe, join us tomorrow morning here at 7 a.m. Central Time on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Bye, guys. There's wires everywhere. DJ AP.
Expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to Wake Up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Is the outdoor of your home about as exciting as a library? Then spice it up and unbore your space with our custom metal signs. Crafted with love and a bit of libertarian magic, you can customize your own metal sign at ap4libertyshop.com. So head to ap4libertyshop.com, customize your own metal sign today.
Welcome to a world of vocal discovery at Peterson Voice Studio. I'm Justin Peterson, here to guide your musical journey. Envision a place where your voice reaches new heights, where every note tells a story. We embrace all singers, from the enthusiastic shower vocalists to aspiring stars, ensuring each voice finds its unique rhythm and tone. Are you ready to elevate your voice? Visit PetersonVoiceStudio.com and sign up for remote lessons tailored just for you. Let's begin this melodious journey together.
Tired of spending your hard-earned money on woke corporations that don't share your pro-freedom values? Fed up with sipping liberal lattes and progressive cappuccinos? Introducing Founding Flavors from AP4 Liberty Shop. Get your day started with Washington's Revolutionary Roast. As robust and principled as the man himself, this blend is the shot of energy heard round the world. Or maybe you want to taste the fervor of freedom with Adams's Patriotic Perk. It's as dynamic and balanced as the U.S. Constitution, sure to awaken your spirit of liberty. For the aficionado avocados, we've got the Jeffersonian Java, a complex mix of flavors that speaks volumes about your refined tastes. And don't forget Betsy's Liberty Lullaby, our decaf option, crafted with the same care and dedication Betsy Ross put into our Star-Spangled Banner. This blend lets you enjoy the taste of freedom anytime without losing sleep. No woke beans here, folks. Just pure, patriotic, pro-freedom flavors brewed with love for liberty. So why compromise your principles for a cup of coffee? Stand up for your values, perk up your patriotism, and start your day the American way. Get your founding flavors at apforlibertyshop.com.